In the peaceful village of Kazimba, hidden deep within the green valleys and protected by towering mountains, lived a young girl named Nyah. From the moment she could walk, people noticed something different about her. Her skin glowed like the early morning sun, and her eyes held a quiet fire, as if she carried a secret from the gods themselves. When she laughed, the wind seemed to dance, and when she sang, even the birds would pause to listen. Nyah was not just beautiful, she was special. She carried herself with grace far beyond her years, and many believed she was touched by the spirits of old. Her mother, Makena, was the village's most respected herbalist. She knew how to speak to the plants, to mix roots and leaves into healing magic. People came from faraway villages just to seek her help, but while they praised Makena for her wisdom, they often whispered about Nyah. "That girl," they would say, "she was born for greatness. She'll marry a prince or become a queen." Yet behind those kind words, there was envy. The women of the village warned their sons, "Stay away from her. She's too perfect, too proud." But Nyah wasn't proud. She was just different. And sometimes being different in a place like Kazimba was dangerous. Nyah didn't care for the attention or the whispers. She spent her days helping her mother collect herbs, learning the names of every tree and plant, understanding how the wind spoke before the rains came. She loved her mother deeply, and Makena raised her with strength and tenderness. "You must be brave," she would tell her. "The world is not kind to girls who shine too brightly." Nyah didn't understand what her mother meant then, but she would, very soon. While other children played, Nyah studied. She learned how to heal wounds, how to calm fevers, and how to listen, not just to people, but to the earth. She felt things others didn't. She knew when someone was lying. She sensed when danger was near. The village elders sometimes looked at her with fear in their eyes, as if they weren't sure whether she was a blessing or a curse. But for all her gifts, Nyah was still just a girl. She laughed with her mother, danced in the rain, and dreamed of love and peace. She had no idea that her quiet world was about to change forever. Something dark was creeping into Kazimba, a shadow from the past, and soon it would take everything from her. Her peace, her mother, her home, everything. But what no one knew, not even Nyah herself, was that this was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning of a rise no one could have ever imagined. During a harsh, dry season, when the winds carried dust instead of rain, a stranger came to Kazimba. His name was Zuberi. He wore a crooked smile and clothes that looked expensive, though faded. His stories were grand. He said he was a skilled hunter from the distant land of Mbandi, a place filled with forests, lions, and riches. The villagers gathered around him, curious and charmed, but no one was more taken than Makena. He brought her rare flowers, sang songs of distant hills, and told tales that made her heart feel young again. Makena, who had spent so many years alone, began to laugh more. She glowed in a way Nyah hadn't seen before. Zuberi helped her carry herbs, fixed her roof, and called her "my queen" in front of everyone. In just a few moons, they married under the big baobab tree, with the village cheering. But while the drums played and people danced, Nyah stood still. Her heart felt cold. She watched him, silent and tense. She didn't believe his words. Something about his smile didn't reach his eyes. She tried to speak to her mother. "Mama, his stories change each time he tells them," she said. "Yesterday he said he hunted elephants. Today he says he only hunts birds. He's hiding something." But Makena only smiled and brushed Nyah's cheek. "You're just being careful, my child. He has brought joy to our home. Let him be." But Nyah couldn't let it be. Zuberi moved too quietly. He avoided questions about his past. He flinched when he saw village guards. And at night, she sometimes heard him muttering in his sleep, calling names she didn't recognize, pleading for forgiveness. Nyah tried to ignore it, tried to trust her mother's choice, but her instincts screamed louder with each passing day. What no one knew was that Zuberi wasn't who he claimed to be. He was a man running from the ashes of his own mistakes. In Mbandi, he had betrayed his own blood, stolen from his people, and escaped before they could punish him. Now, he had come to Kazimba not for love, but to hide, to start over. And Makena, with her kind heart and open arms, was the perfect cover. Nyah felt it. She couldn't prove it, but she knew. And as Zuberi began to settle deeper into their lives, a storm was quietly gathering behind his fake smile. Something dark was coming, something that would change everything. One dark, moonless night, everything changed. The air felt heavy, and silence wrapped the village like a thick blanket. Nyah returned from the river to find her mother lying on the floor, sweating and shaking. Makena, the healer of all, could not heal herself. She whispered Nyah's name with trembling lips and tried to reach for her herbs, but her hands were weak, her strength fading. Nyah stayed by her side, crying and praying. Zuberi stood in the corner, silent and cold, offering no help. By the time the sun peeked over the hills, Makena had taken her last breath. Her spirit was gone. Shock spread across Kazimba like wildfire. The village mourned, but whispers quickly followed. How could Makena die so suddenly? She was never sick. Why was Zuberi the only one with her that night? No one had the courage to ask him directly. He stared down anyone who looked his way, and just like that, the rumors died with the wind. But Nyah never believed her mother died naturally. She remembered the bitter tea Zuberi gave Makena just before she collapsed. She remembered how his hands didn't tremble when he dug her grave. She remembered the faint smirk on his face when the last handful of dirt hit the ground. Something inside Nyah broke that day. Her heart shattered and her soul screamed, but she was alone, completely alone. From that day forward, Zuberi removed his mask. The sweet words vanished. The fake kindness disappeared. All that remained was cruelty. He locked away Makena's herbs and books and told Nyah she was no longer a daughter, just a burden. She became a slave in her own home. He barked orders from dawn to night, made her scrub floors with torn clothes, and ate full meals while giving her scraps, if anything at all. Whenever she tried to speak, he raised his hand. When she tried to leave, he dragged her back by her hair. He took her laughter, her peace, her freedom, and the villagers, once kind and respectful, turned cold. That girl brings bad luck, they whispered. Her mother died under her care. They forgot how Makena once healed their children. They forgot how Nyah once smiled at everyone. They saw only a shadow of the girl she used to be. Nyah walked with her head down, bruises on her arms, and dirt on her feet. Children laughed at her, women whispered, and men ignored her cries. She lived in silence, day after day, hoping the ground would open and swallow her pain. But deep inside, where Zuberi's cruelty couldn't reach, a small fire still burned. It was weak, flickering like a candle in the storm, but it was there, and one day it would rise again. The Festival of Fire was the most sacred day in Kazimba. Every year, villagers lit torches that danced like spirits and sang songs passed down through generations. It was a time of joy, of honor, of deep tradition. At the heart of the celebration lay the village's sacred crown, a symbol of unity, strength, and ancestry. That crown was never to be touched by unworthy hands. But on that cursed night, the crown vanished. Panic spread like wildfire. Drums stopped. Songs froze. The chief's voice thundered through the crowd, demanding the crown be returned. And then, in the middle of the chaos, Zuberi cried out, trembling and weeping like a broken man. "I found it," he shouted. "It was hidden, under her mat." All eyes turned to Nyah, who stood confused and silent as warriors yanked her forward and threw the crown at her feet. "She has dishonored the ancestors," Zuberi wailed. "She has brought shame to her mother's grave." The villagers gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others looked away. Even those who once pitied her now saw a disgrace. Nyah's tears flowed like rivers. "I didn't do it," she begged. "I would never steal. Not the sacred crown, not anything." But her words were like feathers in a storm, light, unheard, and blown away. Zuberi had planted the crown to be rid of her forever, and he had won. The punishment for defiling the sacred object was ancient and cruel. Banishment by burial in the cursed forest of Imaka. It was a place where the dead were forgotten and the living never returned. With no trial, no chance to prove her innocence, Nyah was dragged through the forest, her wrists tied, her mouth silent. Villagers watched from a distance, some crying softly, others saying nothing. She was wrapped in white cloth, the same kind once used for honored ancestors, but now stained with betrayal. They laid her in a shallow grave, dug under a twisted old tree, its branches like claws against the night sky. As the first handful of dirt hit her face, her heart pounded louder than drums. She did not scream. She did not beg. Instead, she whispered words that would echo through the trees for years to come. "I am not dead. I will rise. I will return." The final clumps of soil covered her face, then silence. The villagers walked away, Zuberi leading them with fake grief in his eyes and victory in his smile. But beneath the earth, Nyah's spirit was not broken. The forest may have buried her body, but it could never bury her fire. And deep beneath the soil, her journey was only beginning. Destiny, quiet but never deaf, heard Nyah's final words as the earth swallowed her. Beneath the cursed soil, a secret stream flowed, warm, ancient, and alive. The water crept through cracks in the ground, gently loosening the earth around her body. Hours passed. Then a current pulled her down, carrying her through tunnels of stone and silence, until she slipped into the hidden world of the Doma tribe. The Doma were not known to the surface world. They lived deep beneath the mountains, in glowing caves where crystals hummed and the air smelled of lavender and firewood. Their light came not from the sun, but from the moonlight they trapped in sacred stones. They were healers, warriors, and watchers, keepers of old truths long forgotten by surface dwellers. It was an old seer named Abanza who found Nyah. His eyes were pale like the moon, and his steps silent as mist. He followed the stream to the cave pool where Nyah's body floated like a ghost. Her skin was cold, her breath shallow, but the fire in her chest still burned faintly. Abanza knelt beside her and touched her forehead. He gasped. "This one is not meant to die," he whispered. "She carries the mark of the Queen's spirit." The Doma gathered around, whispering in awe. They carried her gently to the chamber of light, wrapped her in sacred cloth, and began the healing ritual. For days, she hovered between life and death, between body and spirit. But slowly, her fingers moved, her lips twitched, her eyes opened. When she woke, she did not scream or cry. She simply stared at the ceiling of glowing stones and whispered, "Where am I?" Abanza smiled. "You are where destiny brought you." From that day on, Nyah was no longer treated like a broken girl. She was trained in the ancient ways of the Doma. They taught her how to listen to the wind, how to speak truth with power, how to heal with herbs and energy, and how to fight with grace and fury. She learned to move like fire, unpredictable, bold, and unstoppable. Her body healed, but more importantly, her soul was reborn. Her hair flowed like night. Her eyes burned with purpose. Her voice carried power. She was not just Nyah anymore. She was Nyah, the Flame Walker. Even the warriors of the Doma bowed to her strength. Elders whispered, "She is the one from the old prophecy." Abanza looked at her with pride. "You were buried in shame, child," he said, "but you will rise in glory. The world has not seen the last of you." And in the silence of the caves, Nyah smiled for the first time in many seasons. 7 years passed in the deep, glowing caves of the Doma, and in that time, Nyah became something the world had never seen before. Each morning she woke before the moonlight faded from the stones, her body moving with purpose, her heart pulsing with strength. The elders trained her in the ancient arts, healing, war, spirit, and silence. She learned how to crush herbs with her bare hands and mix potions that could calm the wildest fever or break the deadliest curse. The women of the Doma taught her how to feel a wound not just with her fingers, but with her soul. Nyah's hands, once used to clean floors and carry firewood, became the hands of a healer who could pull pain out of a body like pulling thorns from skin. But she wasn't just a healer. The warriors taught her how to fight. She learned how to strike with a wooden staff faster than the eye could see. She trained her body to move with the speed of a hunting hawk, and her feet to step so silently that not even leaves stirred beneath them. They made her climb the crystal cliffs blindfolded and swim through underground rivers with her hands tied. The tests were brutal, but she never gave up. Every scar was a memory, every bruise a lesson. Abanza, her guide and protector, taught her the language of animals. Nyah could call birds to her shoulder and make wolves sit by her side. He also trained her to listen beyond words, to hear the truth hidden in silence. "The world lies," he said, "but the heart never does. Learn to read it like a book." In the 7th year, when the moon was fullest and brightest, Abanza called her into the sacred cave where only chosen ones entered. In his hand, he held a necklace, bones as white as snow, carved into the shape of a lion's tooth. "This was taken from the king of lions," he told her. "He died protecting his pride. His spirit walks with you now. Wear this when you return. Let the earth remember what it tried to bury." Nyah took the necklace with trembling fingers. It was cold at first, but then it warmed against her skin, like it knew her heart. She closed her eyes and saw herself, not as the girl who was once blamed, beaten, and buried, but as a queen rising from fire and darkness. She stood tall, her body glowing in the moonlight, her eyes fierce. The cave echoed with the whispers of the Doma. "She is ready." And so the girl who was once thrown away, who tasted death and walked with spirits, rose from the ashes of her past, not as a victim, not as a servant, but as Nyah the flame walker, the healer, the warrior, the queen the world would never forget. 7 years had melted away like candle wax in the village of Kazimba. The same hills stood tall, the same river sang through the trees, but something had changed. Something cold and cruel had settled in the hearts of the people. Nyah's name was never spoken aloud. To them, she was a shadow of shame, buried and forgotten. Zuberi had made sure of that. Zuberi now stood tall as the chief of Kazimba. He wore Makena's old beads like trophies and called himself a healer, selling potions he didn't understand. He married a loud, proud woman named Lima and spun stories about how Makena had fallen ill from a curse. "I tried to save her," he would say, pretending to wipe away tears. The villagers believed him, or at least pretended to. After all, he had power now, and no one dared question power. Then came the Festival of Fire again, the same sacred celebration that had once marked Nyah's disgrace. The villagers gathered in bright clothes, drums filled the air, and fire dancers twirled like spirits. But just as the fire reached its peak, the wind changed. The sky darkened into a strange red, like it was bleeding. The flames hissed, and the crowd fell silent. From the edge of the crowd, a figure stepped forward. She was tall, wrapped in a flowing cloak of black trimmed with glowing gold. Her steps were slow, but powerful, like thunder hiding behind silk. Her face was covered, but her presence was fierce. The moment she spoke, her voice shook the drums. It was calm but commanding, soft but strong. "I am Nyah," she said. "Nyah the flame healer. I bring truth, light, and justice." The villagers looked at each other in confusion. Whispers filled the air. Who was this stranger with a voice that felt like memory? Who was this woman whose eyes burned like the stars, whose aura made even warriors step back? Zuberi's smile twitched. He stepped forward, his voice too loud, too fake. "We welcome you, healer, but Kazimba needs no saving." Nyah's head turned slowly toward him, and for a moment, time stopped. Her eyes, those eyes, were the only clue, the only window to a truth buried deep. But no one recognized her yet, not even the ones who once saw her carry water from the stream or hum songs with Makena under the sunset. Nyah stood there, hidden beneath power, wisdom, and years of silence. She looked at the village that betrayed her, the faces that turned away, and she smiled, not with hate, but with purpose. Kazimba didn't know it yet, but the girl they buried was not only alive, she had returned. And this time, she wasn't coming back as the healer's daughter. She was coming back as fire. The days following the Festival of Fire felt like magic had returned to Kazimba. The stranger, Nyah, the flame healer, began walking through the village with quiet grace. She touched the forehead of a child who had never seen light, and the boy opened his eyes with a gasp, blinking at the world for the first time. An old woman on the edge of death drank her herbal brew and sat up laughing as if youth had kissed her bones. A dying cow, lifeless and stiff, rose after Nyah laid her hand on its heart. The village, once dull with silence, now pulsed with wonder and whispers. People followed her everywhere, calling her Mother of Miracles. They brought her gifts, songs, even tears. Yet none of them knew the truth, that the same girl they once buried in shame now stood before them in power. Nyah kept her face calm, but inside her heart burned like the sun. She was not there for revenge. She was there for truth. Zuberi had grown weak with time. His once proud walk was now a shuffle, his voice cracked like old wood. He limped to Nyah's hut, his face twisted in pain and desperation. Pride could no longer carry him. "Please," he said, falling to his knees. "I am dying. Heal me." Nyah looked at him, her eyes steady and sharp. She knelt down, touched his shoulder gently, and whispered, "I will heal you. But first let me tell you a story." The villagers gathered, curious. Her voice rose like wind over water. "There once was a girl. She lived in this village. Her mother died suddenly. Her stepfather turned cruel. One night, during this very festival, a crown was stolen. They blamed the girl, and for that, she was buried alive in the cursed forest." Silence fell over the village like a dark cloud. People looked around, suddenly remembering what they had chosen to forget. Nyah stood slowly. Her hands reached for her cloak. Her eyes scanned the crowd. "Do you remember that girl?" she asked. Then in one swift motion, she pulled the cloak away. Gasps broke the air. "It's Nyah," a woman whispered. "No, it can't be," another murmured. But there she stood, taller, stronger, wrapped in elegance and fire. The girl they had buried, the name they erased, had returned. Zuberi's mouth fell open, his body shook, his crimes danced before him like shadows in firelight. "Forgive me," he muttered, eyes wide with fear. But Nyah didn't shout. She didn't curse him. She only looked at him with calm sorrow and said, "You buried me in shame, but today the truth is reborn." And with that, the entire village knelt, not to beg, but to honor, because the girl they once threw away had come back not as a victim but as a queen of light. The chiefs sat in a circle, their faces tight with shock and curiosity. The villagers stood behind them, holding their breath as Nyah stepped forward. The fire at the center crackled, casting flickering light across her calm but powerful face. Then, with a voice that echoed through the hearts of all present, Nyah told her truth. She spoke of how her mother, Makena, fell ill and died suddenly, and how only Zuberi was with her that night. She described the beatings, the starvation, the torment she endured after Makena's death. The village grew still as her words painted the picture of a monster they had once trusted. Then came the final blow, how Zuberi had stolen the sacred crown and planted it under her mat, framing her in front of the entire village during the Festival of Fire. Gasps filled the air, eyes widened, and just when they thought they'd heard enough, Nyah reached into her cloak and pulled out a bundle of cloth. Old, faded, but still familiar. She carefully unwrapped it to reveal the stolen crown, still glittering, still holding the weight of betrayal. "This," she said, raising it high, "was buried with me, wrapped in the same cloth he used. He tried to kill me and erase me, but the truth cannot be buried." Suddenly, from the shadows, elders of the Doma tribe stepped forward, dressed in silver leaves and glowing marks of moonlight. They bowed before the chiefs and confirmed everything. They spoke of how they found Nyah, broken but alive, how she carried the mark of the queen's spirit, how her story matched the truths whispered by the winds of fate. Then, a sound rumbled through the sky, thunder, loud and sharp, crashing as if the spirits themselves had heard the truth and were answering with fury. The villagers looked up, trembling, and the chiefs turned to Zuberi. Zuberi, now pale and shaking, tried to escape. He turned to run, but his knees buckled, and he fell into the dirt. He crawled, begging for mercy, but the people of Kazimba had no more sympathy. They rushed forward and seized him, binding his hands with ropes of ash wood. The chief stood tall and declared his punishment. "You framed a child, you poisoned her mother, you buried innocence and claimed leadership through lies. Your punishment shall match your crime." Zuberi was dragged through the village and taken to the same cursed forest where he had left Nyah to die. But unlike her, he was given no burial, no goodbye, and no prayers. He was cast into the darkness, left to face the spirits alone. And as he vanished into the shadows, the winds whispered again. The shame he once threw on Nyah had returned to him, greater, heavier, and eternal. Karma had come, wearing the face of the girl he thought he buried. The chiefs, once proud and mighty, now knelt before Nyah, their heads bowed in humility. The realization of their wrongs hit them like a wave. "Forgive us," they cried, their voices trembling. "Take your rightful place. You are the one chosen by the spirits." Nyah, standing tall and regal, gazed at the towering mountains that surrounded Kazimba. The village, the lands, and the very earth beneath her feet had been the backdrop of her pain. But now she saw it differently. There was no anger in her heart, no thirst for vengeance. She had long let go of the past, for she understood that revenge would only weigh her down. "I am not here for revenge," she said, her voice steady and full of wisdom. "I am here to heal this land." Her words carried across the valley, reaching the ears of everyone who had once scorned her. The villagers, who had once turned their backs on her, now stood in awe. It was clear this was not the same girl they had buried in the cursed forest. This was Nyah, the Flamewalker, Nyah, the Queen, a woman who had risen from the ashes to restore balance and peace. And so they crowned her, not just as the Queen of Kazimba, but as the Queen of 3 neighboring lands. Her name spread like wildfire across the mountains, over the rivers, and into the hearts of people from all corners of the land. They spoke of her strength, her wisdom, and her unbreakable spirit. The girl who was buried in shame was now a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience, and a queen with the power to change the fate of entire nations. Every year during the Festival of Fire, as the sun set and the flames flickered high into the sky, the people would gather to celebrate her. They sang her name, loud and proud, around the sacred fire, honoring her triumph and remembering her journey. Nyah, they would chant, the girl who was buried in shame, but rose like a queen. Her legacy lived on in the hearts of those she ruled, in the stories told by the elders, and in the way the land itself seemed to prosper under her reign. Nyah's rule was one of healing, not just of the body, but of the soul, for she had learned that true power came not from the crown she wore, but from the love and wisdom she shared. And as the flames of the Festival of Fire danced high into the sky, Nyah, the once shamed girl, now stood proud as the Queen of Three Lands, her spirit unbroken and her heart full of grace. What a journey of strength, resilience, and transformation we've witnessed today. Nyah's story teaches us that no matter how deep the pain or how dark the path, we all have the power to rise. Buried in shame, she emerged as a queen, not by revenge, but by embracing her true self and healing the land around her. Her triumph is a reminder that our past does not define us. It's our spirit, our determination, and our will to rise that shapes our destiny. If Nyah's story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be going through their own struggles. Let her story inspire them to rise, just as she did. And if you believe in the power of stories like this, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us of the strength within. Your support helps us keep telling stories that inspire and uplift. Thank you for being a part of this incredible journey. Together, we can all rise, just like Nyah.